Hi, everybody. So I wanted to give a little lecture about the bioethical stool and the way that we make ethical decisions and ask bioethical questions. So this video lecture is going to outline those principles and then give you a little introduction to the assessment for this week. So if we look at, if you've already opened up this assessment or assignment and assessment that you're listening to this video, we begin with this idea of what a bioethical stool is. So the stool is not like an official bioethical thing. It's something I kind of created as a way to help students better understand how to evaluate actions and things like that in bioethics. So if we look here in the red, topic number 1, the bioethical stool is supposed to be a visual representation of how we decide what action to take or how we can judge a past action. It's a three-legged stool. So if you've ever sat on a three-legged stool, if you can imagine a three-legged stool, they can be quite solid. So an action can be quite secure, right? If we think of sitting on the top, as long as all three legs are present and strong. But if one leg of a three-legged stool is not functioning, the whole stool is weakened. And the reason I use the three-legged stool analogy is because the three legs of the stool represent the three things you have to think about when you think about a bioethical action. Is the action itself, whole stool, stable, right? So we have kind of 4 parts. We have the action or the decision that's supported by the legs, right, on the top of the stool. And in order to support that action, some decision that a person makes, right? We decide to euthanize the dogs. We decide to save the nurse in the example of the vaccination case, right? We decide to let the surrogate mother carry the child, right? You take an action, you make a decision. It's supported by the values that that person or group carries, right? And you'd learn more about values, or you'd refresh your memory about that from background notes on Unit 1. You'd have to identify the ethical approach, the moral approach you want to take to decision making. So are we trying to achieve justice? Are we trying to maximize benefits, minimize harms? That's the second leg. And then the third leg of the stool is you have to have facts to support your decision. You have to have thought about the stakeholders in your decision. So I call that the thinking leg, identifying the stakeholders and then relevant facts that are necessary to make the decision. And once you have all those things, if they all work together effectively, if you have a good moral argument, you have identified your values and you have facts and you've considered all the stakeholders, then your action can be seen as being appropriate. So what do you do with the stool? So in this class, we're going to use the stool to do a couple of things. We're going to use the stool to decide whether you agree or disagree with a decision, right? You've done the mini-brain case study at the beginning of this week. Do you agree that we should be continuing mini-brain research, or do you disagree? You could use the bioethical stool to create your argument. Or let's say there's a decision to be made in the future, like with the with the mini-brain research. So we could decide whether we like that they're doing the research now using the bioethical stool, or we could think about whether we want them to keep going. Do we want to grow these brains bigger, more complex? And we can use our bioethical stool to decide whether or not we should do that, whether we should push that research in the future. So in blue here, it gives you an idea of what you can do with this mental image of how to make an argument. The second topic for today is pretty simple. You got to know how to phrase a bioethical question so that it's a bioethical question. It's very easy. You just follow this simple formula and you'll make sure you're asking a bioethical question. But if you look in green here, it says bioethical questions are always open to interpretation and debate, because there may be different stakeholders who focus on different facts or hold different values. So you can't ask a question that has a one answer, right? How tall is Mr. Burns? That's not a bioethical question. It's a biological question because it'll describe my height, but it's not bioethical, right? So the way we write a bioethical question in blue here is if you just always start with the phrase, should we, and then just finish the question. with the action or the decision. Should we allow the surrogate mother to carry the child and deliver it? Should we continue doing mini brain research? Should we, have euthanized the dogs or have euthanized the people in the situation in Hurricane Katrina? And that leaves it open to interpretation. People can say, yes, we should do that, or no, we should not do that. We should do this in this situation, right? And then, unfortunately, science can't tell us what we should or shouldn't do. The mini brain case study illustrates that. The scientists who developed a way to grow brains outside of a human body, they tell us what we can do. It's a fact. We can grow a brain outside of a body. But they don't tell us whether or not we should. And that's what the role of bioethics is. So what's your task? Your assessment task for today is this. I want you to go look back at your notes on Hurricane Katrina. You're going to be considering decisions that were made about how to treat different people on different days. Excuse me. And you will notice that the situation changes. So the decision about who to treat and how to treat them changes based upon the facts of the situation. So I'm looking at this intro right here. If you read through that quickly. Okay. So when the thinking leg of the stool, the facts change, so does the action or decision people to take. When plenty of boats are coming and they're rescuing lots of people, well, of course you rescue the people that are the sickest and need the most first, right? You get them out of there quick and get them to safety, and then you rescue the people who need less. But by day 4, nobody's coming anymore to save you. You're not even sure if anybody's going to come. You're tired. You're out of water. You're right now. The facts are different. So who you save, the action you take in your bioethical stool changes. So I have a sample here. Looks a lot like the sample you did last week. So you'll want to go back and look at your notes from last week because you'll be able to pull some of that information directly off of the activity that you did last week on stakeholders. So I first described the action. I picked one. You can't do this one. This is mine, right? They decide to euthanize the dogs that have brought to work by some of the employees, right? What's the bioethical question? I have that. Should they have euthanized the dogs in this situation? Sorry, it's early in the morning here. There are 3 columns underneath this top, and this sort of looks like a stool, right? So here's the action or decision, the top of the stool. Is it solid? Well, here are the legs supporting it. This is the thinking leg, key facts. And I've identified the stakeholders and the decision to euthanize the dogs. We have the dogs, we have the owners of the dogs, we have patients who need the water, some facts about what was going on. I outlined that. You're going to do something similar to this for your action. I'm expecting a list of important facts that were important in the decision that was made. Okay? And it should look like this. It should be comprehensive so that you can make a comprehensive argument. Second, what's the bioethical approach? Go back to the work from week 2. And in that week, we learned about the major bioethical approaches. In this case, I think the major bioethical approach they use is maximizing benefits, minimizing harms. And I want you to use the language from bioethics. So you need to go back to those notes if you don't remember all of those approaches, right? And then explain how you know, right? And then finally, what values are being used. And again, go back to week 1. Look for those major bioethical values as you identify the values in their decision. And I think in this case, the value they were trying to do is to reduce suffering of the dogs primarily, but also suffering of the people. And my guess is of those 2, if they had to pick one, they would probably have saved the people and conserved the water for them rather than the dogs. So here's your job, your task. You're going to do this for 2 different actions. One action that was taken in the first 2 days, because the facts were different then. Okay, you're going to list the decision, you're going to describe it, you're going to write the bioethical question that they were asking to themselves. Should we do this? Or you could ask the question, should they have done this? Right? But your job isn't to decide yes or no. Your job is to explain what they were thinking. Okay? You can completely disagree with the decision, right? Maybe some of you will pick the day 3 or 4 decision because it's, the one that has probably the most information and is the decision to euthanize people, to kill them, right? You may very well disagree with that decision. You might be like, no, I don't think, I don't think that was right under any situation to kill those people. Um, but I need you to put yourself in their head, right? And outline what their stool was. You could disagree with their stool. You could say, no, their stool is weak because their bioethical approach is wrong, or they were ignoring these facts, or they should have been paying attention to the person's autonomy and right to make decisions about their own body rather than maximizing benefits. Whatever your argument is, you might feel like their stool is weak, but your job is to figure out what they were thinking when they made the decision. And then we'll learn next week how you would kind of convince us that they were wrong. Okay. Um, so you're going to fill these out. I'm going to use this as an assessment of your ability to kind of do the whole thing. So I also want to really quickly talk about grades in this class. Up until now, almost everything you've done is formative work. But starting from here on, I'm going to be evaluating your use of this bioethical stool, which brings all of the core ideas together as one topic. And I'm going to look at the work you do today as your starting point. Your ability to use this stool to evaluate other people's actions and to decide what we should do in the future is a skill that should get better and better. Right? You should get better at identifying bioethical approaches and values. Excuse me. Better at using facts um, and stakeholder opinions to make decisions and answer bioethical questions. So as you get better, your scores are going to get better. And I'm going to look at all the work you do, including this assessment, as evidence of your ability to think as a bioethicist. So let's say you start off and you do this, and I evaluate it on my rubric. I'm like, they got a 2.5, right? Great, right? Maybe they were a little weak. They didn't use their major bioethical approaches, but they did really good job of identifying all the key facts. They were really detailed and descriptive about what those facts are. Great, fine. And then next week, when we do our next case study on Dennis's decision, um, next big case study, let's say you get a 3, so your score goes up. And then the week after that, you get another 3, and then you get a 3.5. Right, and then, right, okay, so now I've seen a clear growth, 2.5, 3, 3, 3.5. At the end of the trimester, your grade isn't an average of all those. Your grade is going to be a 3.5 because that's where you've developed to. So the key here is to keep pushing, keep attempting to get better. Let me know if you have questions on this assessment, and I hope you all have a good week.